Today we're going to talk about Russia's secret armies, the Catholics. Russia is the source of all evil in the world, and that's because its origin is based on lies. And also, it lies about its destiny, calling itself the Third Rome. As I said before, Russia claims to have the seat of Russian identity being in Moscow, which isn't true. It was in Kiev in Ukraine. In addition, Russia is fueled by super nationalism. Okay, super nationalism is condemned by the natural law. It's condemned by the community of nations, by humanity, and by the Catholic Church. These things, these lies and this super nationalism, are disorders within Russian society. And they are very deep disorders in Russian society and have been with Russia for centuries. And as a result, you've got all of the errors of Russia being spread around the world for decades now, decades at least. And I think there's a very good argument that communism, as well as the international nationalism that the Russians are pushing, are all part of this desire to rule the world. It's all part of their imperialism, which is based on lies and supernationalism. Russia is the evil empire. It is evil. And it brings great disorder to the world because there is disorder within its own society. When you have supernationalism and you're based on lies, you don't care about the person. The person is just a cog in the machine. Well, that's what you got in Russia. And by the way, tomorrow, a day after tomorrow, March 29th, they're having protests in Russia. There was a very famous Russian lawyer who backed Putin until just about 2 weeks ago, and he wrote an article listing 5 reasons why he no longer agreed with Putin. Now he's in a mental hospital in St. Petersburg, supposedly. If you sing songs against the Russian war against Ukraine, the illegal, immoral war of aggression waged by Russia against Ukraine, if you sing songs about that, you face prison time. Up to 12 to 15 years. A lady was just sentenced for a number of. She got off really light. I think she only did about a month total for singing songs in public against the war and against Putin. So what does Russia do to realize its imperialist objectives? Every empire does that. It's an evil empire. So what does it do? Well, it knows its army is crap, as we can tell in Ukraine. Even as I'm speaking, Ukrainians are taking back territory from the Russians. And so what we know is that the Russians employ hybrid warfare, is one word for it. Includes information operations, cognitive warfare. It's war by lies. I'm going to do shows on cognitive warfare and on some of their information operations. I've done some in the past, but I want to develop this theme more. There's so much to do, actually. Russia cannot obtain its military goals, its geopolitical goals, rather, militarily. So it has to resort to lies. It has to resort to information operations, to cognitive warfare, in which it's really a world leader in cognitive warfare. And so, in order to get these lies to their target, and by the way, lies are Russia's greatest export. It's not oil; it's lies. In order to get these lies to the target audiences, which are usually in foreign countries, so oftentimes their own people, they depend on people to do that. These are Russia's secret armies. This term came to me because somebody told me about a Catholic mystic and seer who's known as Blessed Elena Aiello. She lived from 1895 to 1961. I looked her up. She's known for her charity or love. Benedict XVI made her a blessed, made her a venerable on her way to being a saint. But she was characterized by her charity or love, which is what the Catholic chatterers lack. And I say Catholic chatterers, I'm only partly right about that. They do chatter, but they're really not Catholic, so they're really fake Catholic chatterers. So they're just fakes because they really don't have charity and they don't want to work with anybody. These fakes talk and write out of grievance and anger and hatred for money and for fame. They're very disordered people. I mean, I can make a list of them. You just don't listen to these people. Don't buy their stuff. Just they're bad folks. So so blessed Elena Aiello was a lot different from the fakes. And she had visions. And one vision she had, as it's reported on this website called Mystics of the Church, and it's got her name, Blessed Elena Aiello. One of these visions was from August 22, 1960, which I believe was the Feast of the Assumption, I believe. And she writes, quote, if people do not recognize in these scourges of nature the warning of divine mercy and do not return to God with truly Christian living, another terrible war will come from the east to the west. Russia with her secret armies will battle America. Russia with her secret armies will battle America and will overrun Europe, and River Rhine will be overflowing with corpses and blood. Italy also will be harassed by a great revolution, and the Pope will suffer terribly, end of quote. So this struck me. Secret armies will Russia with her secret armies will battle America. That's exactly what's going on. So what are these secret armies? There's at least two of them. One of them are these is this internet bot and troll ecosystem that they've developed. Okay, that is part and parcel of this cognitive warfare, hybrid warfare that the Russians wage, and it's been very effective. But I mean, we've been cracking the code. We figured out what's going on. So it's losing its effectiveness, but it has had some effect in the past. And so that's one big army. We're not going to talk about that today, but they've got another big army, and there are others. But the other big army we're talking about are the fakes that I talked about. It's this group of Catholic chatterers, Catholic leaders that are advancing Russian geopolitical goals through a number of ways. So what I'm going to do today, I'm just going to talk about some key points rather quickly with some references. I've talked about a lot of this over the last few months, and I'll just refer to some of those shows. Okay, I want to digress just a little bit. Because Russian culture, Russian psychology is based on lies, the Russian people are really warped. I mean, they bring something dark, and unfortunately, a lot of Americans get tied up with Russians, get sucked into that evil that's over there. It takes a very strong person to resist the evil that is inherent in Russia. You have to be real strong, and you have to resist it. So, let's talk about these fakes. Let's talk about these Catholic chatters, these Catholic chatters are really fake Catholics, but also there are other people who claim some leadership because they're Catholic, whatever. Okay, so what specifically is the attack? And there's four basic areas that I want to talk about. And the first area that the fakes, the Catholic leadership, which is fake, which is pro-Russian, which is helping the Russians. I'll just call them fakes. So the four areas that the fake Catholics are pushing is multipolarity or attacking U.S. alliances. When they say multipolarity, they're talking about Russian geopolitical goals. And Russian geopolitical goals are saying they want their sphere of influence. They want their empire. Okay. Number two, the second thing the fake Catholics are doing is sectarian conflict. They are inciting sectarian conflict. And with both of these, both multipolarity, which is attacking alliances, and sectarian conflict, a big part of that is attacking Jews. It's anti-Semitism. I've talked about this now for months. This is a big part of the attack. The third thing the fake Catholics are doing is promoting tyranny. They want to do away with representative government. They want unelected people determining what you can do and what you can't do. That's what they want. They want power. And then finally, what they're doing with all of this, and sometimes even more explicitly, they're attacking the church. They're attacking the church. If you're a Catholic and you hear the names of the people I'm going to list now and talk about a little bit here, if you hear their name, you should be afraid for the church. Because these people are attacking the church, and they're doing it by attacking Vatican II. in particular, Nostra Aetate. That's what's going on. Okay? Like I told you months ago, they have to, in order for the tyrants and for the Russians to rule, because the tech brothers and the tyrants and the Russians are all working together. In order for them to rule, they have to discredit Vatican II. They have to attack the church from within and saying it's part of some globalism cabal, and they've got to destroy America. It's all tied together. All right, so let's talk about multipolarity, attacking alliances. Big thing now that these fake Catholics are doing is they're attacking Israel and they're questioning the Christian Zionism heresy. Okay, we're seeing this, the number of chatters who know they're going to get clicks and likes because the Russian troll farms and bots are watching and they want to promote this kind of dialogue. Okay, they want to promote this kind of messaging because it divides Americans. It turns Americans against Israel. It makes Americans dislike Jews, and it increases sectarian conflict, which is part and parcel of this. So, deep into this is this Carrie Prejean Bowler. We see this with Catholic. She was the woman who's on the Religious Liberty Commission. If you don't know, she was on the and she said her religious liberty was violated. The reality is Francis Beckwith was there, I understand it, with others, and he said that she simply misbehaved. She hijacked the hearing. She went against the protocols. That assessment has been confirmed by Bishop Robert Barron, and Cardinal Dolan has consented to all that. Well, guess what? Kerry didn't like it, because obviously there's an agenda here. And Kerry has an agenda. She's advancing this division, this attacking of our alliances by using sectarian conflict. Okay? So then that brings me to Catholics for Catholics, which I talked about in my piece on Joe Kent. Well, who's talking at Catholics for Catholics March 19th event? Well, Bowler, Candace Owens, and Mike Flynn. All right. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and Joe Kent. Joe Kent was there too. Okay. And all of these people advance the same sectarian messages, anti-alliances, pro-multipolarity. And so what they're doing is they're waging a war on Vatican II and on the church. Now, what's interesting is they claim to be America first. See, and they claim to be, well, we're for Trump, we're for Trump. Well, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, yeah, they helped Trump get elected, and then when something happens, right away they turn on Trump, on America, and also, on Israel, and they attack Jews. They're well positioned to do that now, and that's really what this whole thing. That's really what a lot of them are doing. They're moles. If you go back to the movie Dr. Zhivago, you remember that? That was in the mid 60s, I think 67 it came out. It was Omar Sharif and I think Alec Guinness. Alec Guinness was a Russian. He was a Bolshevik. And this is right from the movie. At the beginning of World War I, all the Russians are marching off to war, yay! And Alec Guinness, who's a communist, a Bolshevik, joins the army, and he basically says something like, we're going to be part of this movement, and when it's time to come out of the woodwork, when it's time to come out of the closet, when it's time for us to rise up, we're going to show up, and we're going to lead the revolution. Well, that's what these people are doing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Bowler, Owens, Flynn, Kent, the rest of them. All right, now there's an excellent article that I think you have to find online. It's called, it's by Insurrection Barbie, and it is from March the 5th. It's called The Long Game, The Conservative Right. I think it's a brilliant article. I think it ties many things together. It explains integralism, its foreign roots, its foreign funding, its strategy, its principles, and its messaging, especially under Bannon and Tucker. And the messaging of Bannon and Tucker is multipolarity. It's, and Bannon's a Catholic too. So multipolarity. So Catholics are essential to this attack. We got Bannon, and she talks about these people. We got Bannon, Fuentes, Candace Owens, Kevin Roberts, Heritage Foundation. I've talked to him. J.D. Vance, the vice president. Traditional Catholics, she mentions them. And she said all these people do not represent American Catholics. That's what Insurrection Barbie says. And I don't know who Insurrection Barbie is. But this article, if you can get it and read it, The Long Game, the Conservative Right, it's brilliant. It really ties many different things together, and I believe it is accurate. So you have these people spreading this multipolarity, which means anti-alliances, means anti-Israel. Okay, second major point, the fake Catholics are doing sectarian conflict. Okay, and again, we're seeing sectarian conflict with this constant attack by these Catholic chatters, fake Catholic chatters of all sorts, talking about, well, Protestantism doesn't do this, and Protestantism has got this wrong, and and then of course you really see it in conflict that's being stoked by these fake Catholics to attack Jews, to create divisions between Catholics and Jews. Okay, and yeah, I call them fake Catholics. I mean, I don't know what other name to give them. They don't speak with the authority of the church. They just speak with a certain agenda. And so these are, this self-appointed Catholic leadership that goes out there and creates problems. And one problem is sectarian conflict with Protestants, with Jews, and Mike Flynn is a known Vatnik, former DIA chief, retired Army lieutenant general, paid at least $45,000 by the Russians to speak. Got photos of him with sitting next to Putin in December 2015. I'll see if I can put the link below that explains his all the facts that support calling him a Vatnik. But he sent out an article March 18. Catholic Church under siege. Breaking. Yes, I'm a Catholic. I'm concerned about the attacks against my faith, and few seem to know it's happening, and fewer seem to care. So then he goes on and he says there's institutional failure in the United States, and he says also too that there's a limited response from the Vatican. So it's a twofer, okay? He attacks American institutions and he attacks the Vatican. And what he's doing here is again, it's Catholic identity politics, and this is used to stoke sectarian violence. Okay, that's what he's doing. What is interesting, he put some charts in this article that's out there. The charts actually show a decline in violence against Catholic churches from 2022 to now. So that's another example. Okay, the third thing these Catholics are pushing is that they want tyranny. I've talked about Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, Project 2025. It's about deconstruction of the state, about an imposition of a unitary executive, which is really a dictator. Insurrection Barbie writes in her March 5th article, Long Game and Conservative Right. I mean, this is a brilliant article. She says integralism, which I also talked about. Integralism has been condemned by the church, and that is included in post-liberalism. If you look at some writers, I believe Carpenter is one of the guys. I can't think of the name of his article right now, but Carpenter is one of the guys who explained that integralism is part of post-liberalism. Insurrection Barbie writes, quote, integralism wraps itself in the language of faith, but it's not primarily a theology. It is a political program for the seizure of state power. Christ is not its center. The church as a governing institution with coercive temporal authority is its center. What integralism ultimately demands is not that more people come to know Jesus. It demands that a specific ecclesiastical hierarchy sit above elected governments, that civil law bend to church authority, and that the democratic consent of the governed be subordinated to the doctrinal pronouncements of an unelected clerical class. This is not Christianity. That is theocratic monarchy with a cross on the flag. It is the same basic power structure that the American founders explicitly rejected when they built a constitutional republic. They had seen what state churches did to human freedom in Europe for 1,000 years, and they designed this country specifically to prevent it from taking root here. The Americans built, our forebears built on the person, the primacy of the person, which is Christian. That's Catholic. Okay, they had seen what state churches did to human freedom in Europe for 1,000 years, and they designed this country specifically to prevent it from taking root here. When integralists attack the Constitution as a Protestant error, here comes a sectarian attack, they are not defending Christ. They are attacking self-governance. And every conservative, Catholic, Protestant, evangelical, or secular who believes that human liberty under constitutional law is worth defending should understand that integralism is not their ally, it is their opponent. End of quote. That's an excellent article. Find it, read it. And this is what integralism does. I've spoken about that in a previous show, and it's been condemned by Cardinal Christophe when he was the Apostolic Nuncio to the United States. And the fourth attack by these Catholics is on Vatican II, basically, and especially on Nostra Aetate, but also too on Gaudium et Spes, about the role of how we're supposed to act in the world. We're not supposed to segregate ourselves as Catholics. We're not supposed to have sectarian conflict. We're supposed to work with people towards things that apply to all people. We're supposed to see all people. We're supposed to see all people as our brothers, as people we work with, as members of this world community. So Gaudium et Spes says. And Dignitas Humanae Part 2 talks about the acceptance of Christ, of Catholicism. It's got to be an act of free will. That's theological. So, what you're seeing is a roundabout attack on Vatican II, with this sectarian attack on other religions, with this attack on Christian Zionism, with this constant criticism of Protestants by these Catholic chatters, these fake Catholic chatters, as I call them now. And Gary Progine Bowler is one of them. Okay, so how do we get there? These things always take longer than I thought. Okay, so how do we get there? Well, again, I think Insurrection Barbie explains this. She talks about how this is funded and it's been long term. She breaks it down into phases. I have spoken about it when I spoke about Gareth Gore's book Opus. This has been a long term strategy that has been implemented with very powerful, wealthy people, especially the tech pros, and of course with the Russians. The Russians are involved in this too. And there's an alliance there between tyrants and the Russians. But the Russians are very good on cognitive warfare and hybrid warfare. And so that is being utilized to achieve Russian geopolitical goals, which in the form multipolarity, which means advancing the Russian Empire. And they're working with other people, tech bros, and other wannabe tyrants to destroy America and impose a tyranny and change the essential nature of America. So Insurrection Barbie is a good source how we got there. Increasingly, I'm of the view, I know some of you already know, Archbishop Vigano, he's excommunicated now, played a role too. And this became very clear when I read an article about the retirement of Cardinal Christophe, Pierre Christophe. And the article discussed how he came into the job as apostolic nuncio in 2016, just retired now about 9, 10 years later. But he came into a church that was pulling itself away from Rome. It was becoming very, very conservative, radicalized, if you want. MAGA, I think is a good way to put it. And of course, he replaced Vigano. Vigano has according to Bredal, a correspondent, is the spiritual director of General Mike Flynn. He is known to promote Russian messaging. I remember from 2022, after the Russians invaded Ukraine, he promoted these Russian messages that there's this evil cabal ruling the world and the West is decrepit. And he's continued with a lot of that messaging today. And then in February 2024, there's an address to the Russians in a conference where he repeats a lot of that Russian messaging. So I think Vigano definitely as a figure was very important in infecting a lot of Catholics in America with lies and false ideas and promoting this kind of a secret army that would advance the Russian geopolitical goals. There's a Hananiah clip out from March 21. He interviews Lauren Southern, and she says, quote, I would argue that the vast majority of right-wing influencers now are paid by foreign governments, interest groups, or corporations. So you have the foreign enemies with, very rich, powerful interests promoting this right-wing integralist ideology along with this multipolarity, sectarian conflict, and other things. There's also a Dugan clip from March 18, posted by Brie Dahl. And he says, Dugan says very clearly in his broken English, he says multipolarity is promoted by Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Alex Jones, Judge Napolitano, Kim.com, and Jackson Hinkle. So how we got here? Because the Russians penetrated it and they funded a lot of, and they promoted and they amplified a lot of conservative voices. Okay, so how do we deal with this? I think the basic way is twofold. One, I think it's to go back to Vatican II, is to re-energize ourselves, re-educate ourselves with Vatican II. Dignitas Humanae, Gaudium et Spes, which says that we're supposed to work with everybody. We're brothers with everybody on earth. And it sets forth these general principles of the natural law that we should hearken to. It doesn't call us to be sectarian. It calls us to work together. And I think there is also, we have to take a look at Pacem in Terris. And we have to realize that some people have said that this is a servant church, an apostolic church. We don't want institutionalism. We don't want power. We have to reject Jew hatred in all of its forms. I've talked about this before. People say, well, I can criticize Israel. Well, no, you really can't, because your criticism is not going to be informed. It's not going to be balanced. And usually that is just simply a cover for people to attack and to weaken our alliances. So we have to really defer, to people who are educated, who know the facts, who can deal with these things properly as they should be. I think the second thing we have to do, we have to rehearken to our American principles: person, community of nations, the primacy of law, and peace as the natural means of ordering society. We're not talking about forming a Catholic identity, Catholic countries. We're not involved in that. We're involved in these basic ideas that allow people to live together in accordance with the natural law. We're not supposed to get into identitarian politics. And what we're supposed to do is engage in friendship, good faith, and goodwill. We're supposed to be friends with everybody. The last thing I want to say for the public service announcement is there's a counterpunch going on. There is a counterpunch going on. The Russians' attacks with their secret armies are in the open now, and they're not effective, or at least they're not as effective. We know they've done damage. We know what they're doing, and we're responding, and they know it. And they know that we're going to win. Uh, you know, we know they're secret armies. Once we know who they are, and I'll do other shows on this, once we know who they are, then we can deal with them. They don't have the effect. Um, you're seeing a counterpunch. You're seeing a real return all around the world to the American order, because it works for people. It brings peace and prosperity. And that's what people want. And the ability to practice their faith and live their identity without attacking other people's identity or at the expense of other people. American order has been very beneficial and very good for the peoples of the world for a very long time. And we've always had those four principles I've told you: primacy of the person, peace is the natural objective, rule of law, community of nations, or community of states. And the church, especially in Pacem in Terris, has approved of that and said, that's right. We agree with that. Okay, so hit the like button and subscribe. Remember, I, I don't do this for fame or fortune. I do it because it's the right thing to do. And I got 29 minutes to burn on a Friday afternoon. Thank you.